Hi, I'm Michelle Olivier, and you're listening to Hey, I Want Your Job, the podcast that looks at amazing jobs and what it takes to get them. Welcome to Hey, I Want Your Job. And this week, I am joined by Roya Dedeaux, rhymes with Play-Doh. And she has a fascinating job that is similar to ones I have thought of in the past, but is a particular iteration that you could not pay me enough to do this job. Dubious, I know. Roya, what is your job title, my dear?
I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. That's the big one. I was just telling somebody yesterday that people are often not happy to see me. All the big bad feelings come up, but I actually work very specifically on helping people with playfulness.
That would suck less.
Yes.
But so years ago, I had this like wild hair that I was like, I'm gonna be a counselor. I should not be a counselor, Roya. That would be a terrible choice. Because counselors are not supposed to give their opinion about everything. And I am not good at not giving my opinion about everything, as it turns out.
Yeah. So I have found some ways around that.
I was gathering industry people to be like, tell me about your life. And they're like, consistently, they're like, I don't work with families and I don't work with couples. Those people are crazy, like individuals. And then I also saw some harrowing statistics about how the highest instances of safety issues for counselors always in couples.
Yep.
Like the highest instance of people who are like have death threats or are physically attacked by their clients or whatever, it's always in couples counseling. So girl, what were you thinking? Why this?
That's a great question. I actually never thought I would be in private practice as a therapist. That was never on my radar. Since the time I was like 5 years old, I wanted an art therapy camp. That was my dream. And so when I went to college, I got a degree in recreation and leisure studies with the idea of I'm going to run a camp. And then I was looking at art therapy programs and they are very expensive. And so I was like, well, I'll just get the counseling degree and my therapy license and go back there. And then interned in private practice and loved it because it's not just the people that you work with, but it's the whole job. And I just really liked it. So here I am now with my own private practice. Telehealth helps with the safety piece for sure. And the work that I do, so I always say I also don't work just with couples. To be honest, it's funny that you say that. I work with parents. And so inevitably there's couples work and there's stuff that happens, but it tends to be focused on the family and the kids. And most people in private practice at this stage are there because they're seriously invested in making their families and their lives better. I come from community mental health where I had like court-ordered clients and people who are there because of anger management and domestic violence and things like that. And in those places, it was different because at an agency, you have safety measures in place. But yeah, no, I've had to call my fair share of 911 calls and staying to make sure other clinicians were safe and things like that.
So let's jump right in with my tough questions then, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was we hear a lot about COVID, and most of the talk is about, isn't it lovely that families are spending more time together? But one of the things that we don't get enough press about is that it also means that people who are being abused are spending a lot more time with their abusers and people who are in unsafe conditions. And I think that in particular, what I wanted to talk to you about, because I think that if it's a physical safety thing, it's easier for people to get their head around needing to be removed or taking emergency measures, that sort of thing. What are you finding in your practice with regards to non-physical abuse and spending that excess time with your abuser in a non-physical abuse situation? And I guess, what should people be doing to keep safe, to watch out for people that we engage with on the daily for that? Talk to me.
One of the big things is that not only in family systems where there was already some level of abuse present, but also in just your average, ordinary, like seemingly healthy families, COVID has been like a pressure cooker for so many things. And so with increased anxiety and increased other stressors, I think that there have been some family situations that might have gone without any kind of abuse that became abusive as well. And so I think that for a lot of people, if they are thinking like, oh, it's just COVID, it's just extra stress, right? That yes, that is true. And the behavior is still there. And so not to just excuse it away that it'll all just go away now or anything like that, but to recognize that it matters why and wherefore, and it doesn't, right? And so to just look at things with that lens. And the other piece, the thing that I'm seeing hard for everybody, but especially in cases of abuse, is the isolation. That's one of the hallmark characteristics of abusers is control and isolation. And so in a setting where very often abusers are already trying to prevent their partner, whoever it is, from interacting with friends or family or seeking any kind of satisfaction outside of their dependency on that person, the pandemic has made that just so much harder. And it's made it hard for the kids too, where school or sports or activities might have been the haven for them or the place where they might have gotten help or someone would have noticed. All of that has really made, there's a whole other pandemic happening, I think, under the,
I think that's a really good way of putting it. There's a whole other like mental health pandemic happening at the same time that we have this physical health pandemic. I know so many things I thought as you were talking there. I want to start with the first thing I thought, which was about this idea of people controlling. And I think I have a friend whose mom has dementia, and she was living with them during the pandemic. And because she doesn't really understand what's going on, she's still in earlier stages of dementia. So like she knows who everybody is, but like executive function is non-existent, et cetera, et cetera. But like several times she just freaked out because she felt like my friend was controlling her, that she was isolating her, that she was like, you won't even let me go to the grocery store. I'm a grown woman. And that's because there's a pandemic and you're in your 70s. Really? So it's so heartbreaking for people who are having a hard time. And I think that, so I guess one of my questions is, that's a big family dynamic, the multi-generational thing. What are you seeing? What are you hearing in that kind of space around how that's impacting like grandparents who are at a higher risk or maybe who have some of these kind of issues, and then now everybody is trapped?
I think it's really shining a light on how decisions are made in families and how much trust there are in families. And this is one of the things, like when I work with parents and they talk about like little things, right? Like, oh, I just can't stand that my kids are playing Minecraft for hours and hours. We talk about how those little interactions about something that seems silly about the video that they're watching or the TV show or whatever, that it's those little moments of building trust and respect and connection that build up till when there's something that really matters, where it's a safety issue, that you have the relationship where you all trust each other. And it's what I work with parents on, is helping them in those smaller moments, so that when it's a case of, look, there's a pandemic and we're trying to keep grandma safe, that everybody's on board with that kind of, it sounds super cheesy, but like harmonious family living, because it's a trust thing and it's a relationship thing. And so if you've got the foundation of like, I don't trust you, I think you make up rules, I think you're just trying to be controlling, I think that you don't understand what I want, then those are the families where there's resentment, or there's sneakiness, or there's, I'm going to go do what I want and then lie about it, or that kind of unsafe behavior in general, and then particularly during a pandemic.
Yeah. So you talked about kids a couple of times there. I have tiny people. So I have 3 and 5. And one of the things that we have struggled with consistently is getting the pitch right between them understanding why this is important and why it's dangerous, and also not scaring the bejesus out of my children.
Yeah. Yes.
So talk to me about what that dialogue looks like in a healthy family, and what Give me some free coaching here. That's what I'm looking for, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So therapy session. So of course, every kid's different, right? I have a kid who is dialed in to what are the grownups talking about, and because I also have some little people, and they're like they listen when you don't realize they're listening, and later they're like, "Mother, tell me about blah blah blah." I'm like, "Really? You understood that?" You always hear about like, oh, TV shows will just go right over their head, and not all the way with this one. And then I have one kid who's like half feral, naked in the backyard, digging in dirt, couldn't care less about anything else. So depending on the kid you have, my answer is going to be different. But it is always going to come down to the thing that causes the most fear, I think, in people, but especially in kids, the kid type of people, they're people too, but especially them, is having knowledge of something that then they don't have any control over. It's not actually the knowledge of something scary, I think, that really ultimately scares the bejesus out of small people, but it's also the just, I can't control it. And it's extra scary when their grown-ups can't control it. And so I think that when we're sharing information, it's a, no, we can't go to the grocery store. There is this thing, you've noticed people wearing masks because that's what we're doing to help. And we can't go here because of blah, 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 but here's what we can do. And so if you can always couple the scary information with, and here's how we are at least controlling our bubble. We might not be able to control everything, but here, it's like that, what's that Mr. Rogers quote about looking for the helpers, right? Here are the things we can do. Here are the things we have done. Here are what other people are doing. And here's how I know that we can make it through scary times. I think
I have officially screwed up the whole thing. I've probably broken my children for life, because that is not how we have handled it, Roya. We've been very, hey guys, no, we can't do that. Why can't we do that? Because of the coronavirus. That's right. But as soon as it's safe, we're going to go do all kinds of fun things. And in the meantime, we're going to go home and do blah. And they're like,
that's that.
Do you really want to go?
But that's
But it is definitely, we can't do that. Why? Because of the coronavirus. And like,
that's truth, right? That's why I say the same thing to my kids, and they're like, oh, virus. And my kid comes to me, Mama, if I had one wish, it would be that the virus was over. And it's heartbreaking and it's awful. And it's that piece of, yeah, me too. This is sad and terrible for all of us. And we've been through sad and terrible together, haven't we?
I think one of my biggest like mommy heartbreak moments of the whole thing was my kiddo was sitting there building something with his foam blocks, as you do. It was like pew 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 pew, and I was like, "Oh, what is that, my friend?" And he was like, "Mama, it is my blaster, and it is blasting the coronavirus." Pew. And I was just like, I just cried a little. Like I had to leave the room because the idea that's their childhood. God, he's 5. He's 5. And he's blasting the pandemic. Ew, like I can't, that is so far removed from my childhood and what would have been on our radar. And then last summer, we had to have the beginnings of the conversation about the Black Lives Matter movements and why are they rioting and why are they picketing? Because we had people in our neighborhood that were having big protests and that kind of stuff, even here locally. And we talked about going to join, and then ultimately decided that it wasn't safe because we have tiny humans who cannot be vaccinated. All of that. And it's just been like one conversation after another. And I'm like, man, it was so much easier in the 80s.
So this is one of those things that I have had, as you were saying that, I was tearing up too, because we've had a couple of pandemic birthdays now, and every time he blows out those candles, Mama, do you know what I wished for? Like, yeah, I do. I know what you wished for. And if you had one wish, Mama, what would you wish for? And I made the mistake the last time he asked me of saying something silly like a unicorn, and he goes, really? You wouldn't wish that the virus goes away? I'm like, obviously that, child. But so you said something there. We couldn't have prepared them for this. Like we didn't know. If somebody knew, but we did not know that this was coming. This was not on our radar. I was not prepared for half of my 4-year-old's life so far to be in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think that goes it's a really important lesson for all of us to remember, because even though this is a pretty extreme version of that, we never know what our kids' future is going to have. Like, we just don't. And so every time I've got parents talking to me about, I'm so scared that, I keep going back to the Minecraft thing, but like they're playing for hours and they're doing this and they're that, and it's not preparing them for the future. Like, we don't know. Yes, it is. It turns out that being on video calls and doing stuff online absolutely prepared them for this future. And I think it's a good lesson for us that what we can do is about our relationship with them and about giving them skills and strengths, but any like concrete piece of information, we don't know. We don't know.
I think, yeah, we tried to just lead with love. And I know that sounds cliched, like a non-thing to say. I heard that as it came out of my mouth. But what I meant by that was that what we tried to make sure that they know that viruses, protests, monsters under their bed, what have you, that they are loved and they are safe in this family. And so I feel like for me as a mom, like that's one of my big lessons of this. I can't keep them safe. And I've said this a few times to my own actual counselor. I do pay for one as well, right?
Good work.
One of the things I've said is, I think one of the things that's the hardest for parents is that I can throw my body in front of a bullet.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been on a parenting level and on, I think, just a human, again, parents are humans too, a bigger picture human level.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things about the last couple of years, I think, is that people have been threats in a way that they haven't been for most of us before, where it doesn't matter if it's our neighbor, our grandma, our best friend, that we walk out the front door and all of these people are potentially a threat to us or our kids. And that part has been, I think, leading to more anxiety in everybody in a way that we haven't had that issue really before, at least not on this level. And so it's been.
And again, as a parent, whatever it is that you freak out about, because every parent has like the thing that's their like, this is their big monster that's going to eat their child. Whatever that is, now, there were things you could do.
Yes.
You're terrified of child predators? Great. You can helicopter mom the hell out of that shit. Like, he will never be out of my sight. No one will take him. I am not that mom, for the record. Like, I'm like, I'll be fine. They'd bring him back anyway. But like that, but there were things we felt like we could control. But when it is an infinitesimally small, invisible thing, it's just that is in the air. How do you protect your kid from the goddamn air? Like,
so not to lead you down like not to lead you down an existential crisis here or anything, but I think this is a good reflection that all of that control we felt like we had about those other things was a complete and total lie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we had the lie, Roya. This has taken it from us, and that is rude.
It is. It's awful. It's someone shown a big giant spotlight on the fact that our kids, like once they are out of us, are just them, and we can't do anything about the people and the air, the actual air. Yes. And so this, again, it just goes back to, you know, that leading with love thing, which I'm guilty of my fair share of cliches, because my whole thing is always like relationship first. Yeah. I can helicopter to a certain point, but either time or something else will come in and make it so I can't helicopter anymore. And at that point, I need them to have the relationship with me that makes it so I can make them safe. And so that goes back to that idea about the family structure during COVID, and it goes back again to let them play the dang Minecraft, because that's showing that you trust them and that builds the thing. And I'm on repeat with that, because it does come back down to relationship.
Can see that Minecraft is a big part of your life right now. I don't know if this is personal or if this is like all of your clients currently have Minecraft drama, but I'm definitely feeling like you've got some Minecraft demons that
I will have to talk to my therapist about this.
About your Minecraft
issues. No, it's fun. It's I use that because it's an easy one, and because I play Minecraft with some of my clients sometimes.
Gotcha.
Because that's the world they're living in. But that's the thing that seems like it takes up so much time for so many kids. And that's what parents are really freaked out about, how much time their kids spend. Not just what it is they're doing, but they're going on hour 6. What's going on here?
So I guess that brings me to getting away from how awful COVID is.
Yeah.
Momentarily. I want to talk about the whole, if I, as a mom, was like, you know what, my tiny human, I feel like needs some help. And I, like, as a family, we could use some help not killing each other. And I was like, I'm going to get a family therapist. One of the things that would, I don't feel like we do, but if we did, one of the things I know that I'd be like, I can't see how that would work, would be my tiny humans on a Zoom call with a therapist. Like, we'd be doing well to get any kind of attention live and in person.
Right.
Let alone, hey, look at this screen and talk to this human that you've never met and have no context for. They're just not those kids. They'd be like, I don't know, Mom, this is a boring show. I'm going to go now. Can we watch Pokemon instead? What is happening? Like, how do you engage with kids? Like, how do you literally do your job, remote, etc., and make that real and useful for those kids?
It's been definitely in person is also hard. There is a certain element of both things have difficulties when a kid doesn't want to be there. When a kid wants to be there, and you'd be amazed, these generations coming up, how many of them are requesting the therapy. It's pretty fantastic, actually. I always have clay, first off, that I'm squishing all the time, and like crochet hooks and yarn. And so I really encourage, when I talk to parents ahead of time, I encourage them to like just strew art supplies or fidget toys or whatever you've got, like have them there. They don't have to sit still and quiet and listen to me. That's not what therapy is. That kid's time. I have had sessions where a kid took me on tours of their house, or they were on the trampoline once, which made me want to puke, but it worked for them. So the kid gets to be mobile and move still. If they're into art, we do a lot of art together. And like I said, I sometimes will screen share with my clients or play with them games that they're playing. And so then they chat, but their hands are busy and they're in a game. And sometimes if a kid has a show like Pokemon that they'd rather be watching, I have watch shows with my clients, literally, where they'll put it on and I'll watch like from my screen to theirs, or we'll do that Netflix party thing or whatever. And then we pause it and we talk, and I ask them about their favorite parts. And it's really pretty phenomenal how much kids will open up as soon as the adult who's trying to talk to them starts with a genuine interest in what they're interested in.
I'm trying to picture now pausing Pokemon to try to talk to my children. They'd be like, I feel like you don't understand how shows work. This episode was still going.
And you know what? And sometimes it's that. It's okay, let's go. You all watch this episode. Ooh, I'll watch this episode. You watch this episode. When we're apart, we'll come back together and we'll talk about that. And bring your crayons because I want to talk Pokemon. I have had full sessions where we talked about if we could design our own, or if we were a Pokemon, or what it feels like to level up or not to evolve, or what the control that Ash has over the Pokemon, and are they. There's a lot of therapeutic stuff to happen in the world of Pokemon. Thank you very much.
Noted. So I, more generally still, one of the things that has come up in my mom group about lately that I would be really interested in your professional opinion on is because my mom groups is for kids of similarly tiny stature. There's been a lot of question about if you think your kid is ADHD or somehow neurodivergent, at what point do we go and get help in figuring that out? And I have some people in my group, full disclosure, who say the moment you suspect, get thee to a psychiatrist, get the help, so that we are raising supportively from the moment we think that's a thing. Other people in the group say, what? At a certain point, they're just 3. And wait until they are developed enough to be enough of a human being to know what the hell they are. They could just be being 3 this week, and it's not an indication of autism. So, where my guess is the truth is somewhere in between. It usually is. But what would your actual recommendation and thoughts on that kind of?
I think that it's only a problem when it's a problem. Things like ADHD, so often the problem is actually the environment, right? That you take the kid, study after study show, like if you take a kid with ADHD out of a classroom with 40 other students where they're expected to sit and learn in a very certain way, they don't have problematic ADHD behaviors anymore. And so I think that's the biggest thing, that if a family needs some sort of accommodation for their kid, if their kid is in a classroom setting or something that's not working for them, then by all means, testing, evaluation, that kind of stuff is generally what you have to do to get the services, to get the special accommodation.
Yeah.
I think that's a terrible issue with schools. I wish, honestly, that every single kid could have the opportunity to get something individualized for them because they all need it, not just if there's something neurodivergent about them. But that would be what I would say to my own friends or family or clients. Is it a problem? Where is the problem? What is the problem? And would getting some sort of evaluation help with that problem? The kid's not the problem.
So I'm going to ask another question that I know is a religious argument in your community, your professional community. So please know that you don't need to use all the disclaimers about not everybody feels this way, blah, 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 but I am interested to hear your take.
Yeah.
Medication
Mhm.
at an early age
Mhm.
for those behaviors. One of the, again, schools of thought are ADHD, even if not problematic,
Mhm.
your brain is not functioning at maximum efficiency, and it causes frustration. It can cause anxiety. It can cause, I'm telling this to the audience, not to you, Roya. I understand that you know more about it than I do. But so it causes all of those things. So even if they're not being problematic, getting the medication that they can feel better and function better earlier is great. Other school of thought, don't medicate your kids unless there is an actual palpable problem, because kids be kids. Am I right?
So
Again, I know it is a religious argument. There are great experts and thought leaders on both sides in both camps. What is your experience? Where do you fall?
my experience, where do I fall? I used to be very 100% like, don't medicate the children. The schools are the problem. The classroom's the problem. Let them move. And I think that if we're medicating for behavior management, that's a bigger issue. I think that really is. I think that it is an issue, medicating for behavior management so that teachers can manage 35 kids in a classroom.
Yeah.
I think for an individual person, medication is a tool. In the same way that like deep breathing is a tool and going for a run is a tool and going to a therapist is a tool. And so if a kid is feeling like things are unmanageable for them, if they're coming to the table with this, I don't know what I'm doing, this isn't working for me, I feel so overwhelmed or frustrated, and that's a tool to use and try, I at this point, I'm not for keeping away a tool for some sort of philosophical reason. I do think it again goes back to treating that tiny human as a human that they are and being able to have the conversation with them about here's what that might look like and let's try something and see if it works, and the willingness to, if it doesn't work, to be able to make a shift or change that. So I'm fully like I'm queen of the ADHD bees in my brain. I mentioned earlier, my side hustles have hustles. Like I'm squishing clay as we talk because I can't if I don't. I made it through grad school by crocheting my way through because I couldn't sit still. And I was homeschooled. My mom took me out of public school at the end of 4th grade, right before I firmly believe I would have ended up medicated. And part of me now, I'm going to disclose, I'm not medicated for ADHD at the moment. And I have been really debating that. But because I went through most of my life without any kind of shame or stigma about how my brain worked. My parents worked really hard to avoid situations where that would be the case. And so I think that if you're in a situation where you can medicate and talk about it as a tool, as opposed to here's the fix for the thing that's wrong with you, then it's really a tool, but it's layered and it's complex.
So I feel all of those things because I have always been like, I grew up in an age that they've already dated myself, that I'm a kid of the 80s, but like I grew up in an age where that's what ADHD meds are for. Oh, little Susie's a little precocious. Give her some Valium and she'll be fine. That was very much how it was treated when I was a kid. And that any kid that was not something the teacher wanted to deal with got that label, got the drugs. That was that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very emotionally anti that. And then one of my girlfriends was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD and spectrum. And she was just like, first of all, how much easier would my damn life have been if I understood that the problem was not like behavior or me being, lazy or stupid. It was that my brain works differently. She's like, for God's sake. But then the second thing she said was that when she got on the medication for ADHD, that she felt for the first time in her life that the gears in her brain were actually connecting. And that she had felt before, always felt like she was like revving, trying to get somewhere. And that this gear was spinning here on one hustle and this gear was doing this. And there was no synergy between the gears. And that as soon as she got her meds, suddenly the gears locked. And she was like, and now I just feel like I could take over the goddamn world because now I get to pick what my gears do and they work together and they drive things. And that to me was super, that personal story. Like I know anecdotal evidence, but like that personal like testimony from her really changed my view on what that would be like for somebody, and how I think about if we had concerns about my kid, shit, I don't want them to feel like their brain is doing this for their whole life. That sounds awful. So if we can stop that at age 2, let's stop it at 2. But then the other part of me is like, also, I don't like, yeah. So it's just so complicated. Damn it, Roya. Why is it not easy?
It's so complicated. I love, that's the perfect description, I think, of medication that works. That's amazing. That's such a good description. And I think, so part of what it sounds like for her too is not just the medication actually doing that, but also the like acknowledgement that, oh yes, this is how my brain works. And I wasn't being lazy. I wasn't being stupid. And if only all of the people in her life were able to talk to her about that from a young age, I think that medication could still provide her some relief, and there wouldn't be that other deep layers of the shame and the guilt and all the other part that piles on. And so I think that's the piece. If I had, this is not hypothetical, I have, but if I had young kids that had neurodivergent tendencies, my first goal as they're developing, as we're figuring out, is this them being 3, is this something else, is how do I set up an environment where that answer doesn't really matter because it is how they are. And I love how they are, and here are their strengths, and here is how we're going to work with them, so that when they get to a point where they're in parts of the world where it doesn't work for them, they can recognize that there are tools that they can use, but it's not about there's something wrong with me. So I don't take medication for my ADHD. I do take medication for anxiety. And I remember talking, I don't remember who it was I was talking to about, but I remember after a couple months on it, I was like, it felt before like I was like on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and there was this big chasm, and it was just the existential crisis Grand Canyon, and medication put up like a guardrail. Like I could take a step back and it was still there. I still know it's there, but I feel like safe enough that I can turn my back to it and do other things. And so I personally also know the relief of medication that actually works, right? And helps your brain with something. Yeah. And I just want parents to not ever go into it with, this is going to be the fix. This is going to fix the problem.
Now we're going to fix you, kid. Yeah. And so like I was diagnosed not until my senior year of college. I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And they were like, and literally my girlfriend was taking a psych class, and she They had to go and administer the little test to all of like a certain sample set of people. And she was like, I must be doing something wrong because you keep coming out as being totally dyslexic. And so she got the professor, and the professor, no, how did you not know? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that question. And then everything just clicked in, right? Like when I was a kid and they would write the spelling words on the board, and every single time mine were crazy misspelled. And then I would get in trouble.
Yeah.
And like I was told I was lazy. I was told that I just wasn't paying attention. You're too smart for this bullshit, Michelle. When are you going to finally pay attention? I tell you, if you put half of the energy into actually noticing what you were doing, that you did everything, like all of these things. And in retrospect, none of it was that I was lazy. It was because my brain doesn't fire that way, bitches. And so then I went through the period, it was like, well, but to compensate, here is the list of shit that I figured out how to do. And then I was like, so we shouldn't diagnose people because I want them to have all of these fabulous skills that I have created as a coping mechanism. And I remember I said something about it to one of my friends' mother-in-law, happens to be one of the top dyslexia experts in the United Kingdom. And we were sitting around drinking wine, and I said I was dyslexic, and she was like, what? Now I have all the interest in you. And I made this like really flippant comment about, and she was like, that is not how intervention should work. She was like, how intervention should work is they should have come to you and said, hey, here's this list of things we're going to teach you how to do. Also, here's these 2 other lists of things you didn't know. And then once you figured out those old lists, we're also going to do some other things to help make the world more in line with how your brain works. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that seems different.
Like I also, that's the thing I'm grappling with ADHD medication personally, right? Is like, I enjoy how I work. I like my business.
I like my bees.
Like, yeah, I'm the queen of them. And I totally just blanked on what I was going to say with the bees. You're going to get lessons. Like, you can't help it, right? So you might not need to have all those coping skills for that. You might not have had to go through years of masking the fact that you were dealing with all of that. You would have also gotten lessons for other things because things are hard and stuff sucks sometimes. And there's plenty of other challenges even with that. We make meaning looking back on things, right? There would have been plenty to make meaning on.
Oh, I like that phrase. We make meaning looking back on things. So we have spent a lot of time talking about children and talking about how our personal brains don't work. So I feel like this has been very narcissistic. Great. We have not talked about the other people that you deal with in your practice, which is the grown-up people. So let us zag for a moment in that direction. And parents, like you and I have both gotten teary, I think twice at least in this conversation because it's been rough, girl. What, if you were going to pick out like the top 3 pieces of advice you keep saying to married couples, parents, etc., for how to take care of themselves, what would that be? Manage those relationships.
So you mean like between the grown-up peoples?
That's broken. The whole kid thing is just.
Yeah, there's something to that. Yes. I do think that looking for commonalities, like it's really easy to focus on. Let me back up a little bit. Like we have values. Everybody has values, right? I have a list somewhere. Actually, it's in my book. I have a list of 500 values that just got all written out. One of the things I like to do with parents or couples is to go through and do a really fun, very painful exercise where you narrow down that list of 500 to 3. And then those are your top values. And I like to do this with couples because then they can see, wow, we're really different in these areas, or wow, we're really the same. But when they feel really different, I ask them to find synonyms. Okay, you might have had creativity and you might have had discipline, but why do you have those values? What are you hoping to get out of that thing? And so to flesh out where the little Venn diagram intersection is. And so to look for the commonalities, to look for the places where you overlap with your partner, to look for the things that you share, like actively do that work, because I think it's really easy not to. And there was a TikTok, and I can't even remember who the TikToker was, but he was talking about Gottman and the Gottman Institute, which is the like gold star of all the couples work. And he said something like, look at the fucking bird. And the idea was, if your partner says, oh, look, it's a cool bird, look at the fucking bird, take the bids. And so to me, that goes along with the look for the commonalities and look for the places where you can both look at the bird and accept each other's bids for that interaction. And I think that the way, oh yeah, go.
That was one. Was one.
Oh, that was one. Oh crap. Okay, 2 is play. Play.
I mean, like,
oh yeah,
not easy. Yeah, okay.
All the play of all kinds. I think a sense of playfulness. So not just sit down and play Monopoly, but also a sense of playfulness, which everybody
should sit down and play Monopoly, because it is the best board game, and I don't care what other bitches say. They can be wrong, Roya, but Monopoly is the best.
Who's the stand-up comedy that has the like, it's 3 a.m, Grandma, I'm done with Monopoly. I have feelings about Monopoly that we might not share, but
you can be wrong. That's okay. I can still respect you and know that you were wrong about things.
I have been wrong about some things. We'll see. Time will tell about the Monopoly thing. It's been around for a while. I do think, however, that it's not just about board games, which that's important too. Actual time spent together doing things is important. But when I say a sense of like gamefulness or playfulness, is more the idea of looking at things as a challenge, right? Like, so if you sit down to play a game and it's hard, you go into it with this agreement with each other that you're going to play, which is why Monopoly sucks, because people end the game halfway through. But you go
not into it. Not if they play right.
But theoretically, you sit down to a game and you're like, we're both committing to this experience together. We're going to see this through. You go in with a sense of, it might be hard, but I trust that I'm up for the challenge of whatever the game is. And you go into it with, even if I lose or even if I fail, I'm still going to get some value from it, something out of it. And that's, to me, the perfect, if you can take that idea and generalize it over to relationships, to look at things as a challenge as opposed to a threat. And I think in relationships, when we start to get, oh, this sucks, this is the worst, we feel like we're like hunkered down and shots are being fired. And it's not a challenge at that point. It's a threat to our well-being, or it's a threat to our happiness. And when we are like in the foxhole, we tighten, we can't breathe, we can't think creatively, we feel like we're under attack, we get defensive, like all the shit that we're not supposed to go into a healthy relationship with happens. So being able to switch it to challenge, not threat. That was only 2.
Number 3, you got this, Roya. Marshall the bees. Let's go.
Marshall the bees. Assume the best.
Okay.
I think assume the best. I think going into, given the assumption already that you picked this person, that you loved this person, that you wanted this person, that they were a good fit for you at some point, I think a lot of little things that can turn into big things can come from assuming, or from not assuming, the best of the other person. So when I come downstairs and there's the dirty dishes and the crumbs and the whatever, to assume that, oh, they were really focused on this other thing that they wanted to do, not that they left this here for me. And I have to be perfectly honest, because if my husband ever listens to this, he's going to laugh out loud, because that is, I swapped roles in that situation. That is, yeah. But to assume that the other person also cares and is also doing their best.
And I'll tell you a couple of ours as lay people, and then you can tell me if these are terrible ideas or if my husband and I are just complete geniuses. We obviously feel like we're total geniuses.
Sure you are.
Just so you know. Spoiler alert. So one of our big ones is related to what you just said, but it is to tell the truth. And what that means is, like, when he does something that fucks me off and I'm like, and he's like, I'm sorry, What I said was, and then I hold myself accountable to say it out loud. And then I held myself accountable to say, when you did X,
Yep.
that was really frustrating.
Mhm.
And that rather than me be like, oh, nothing, sorry, it's no big deal, and then try to blame it off and then keep
Yeah.
that lid on that pressure cooker. Nope, you just got to be honest and you got to be like, what's wrong? The trash guys are going to be here in 15 minutes and we're going to take out the trash, and yet here it remains in the kitchen. Am I right? Like, being honest.
Mhm.
And then another number 2 really big one is to remember for yourself and call the other one on, it's not always about you.
Mm.
I'm in a bad mood. I walk in and I'm in a bad mood. And he's, what did I do? Not a goddamn thing. There's a whole other universe out there trying to piss me off.
Yep.
Just because I'm in a bad mood, it doesn't mean it's about you.
Yep.
Stop the narcissism. Am I right? So those are our 2, and we call each other on it. And I guess if we had a third, it would probably be to ask for help, which some of us may be less good at than others. Some of us may have a torn rotator cuff in her right arm and still insist on putting away the dishes if not reminded.
Some of us should probably think of this as a really good reminder for doing them. I love that. I think that first one, that being honest, right, and telling the truth, that requires a certain level of your own, like, knowledge of, I have a feeling, I'm recognizing that I have a feeling, I can feel the feeling, I can connect the feeling to the thing that's happening on the outside of me, and then I can talk about the feeling. And then that requires the other person to be able to, like, respond and not be defensive. And that to me
We
shows
pay
you
therapists to help us be these healthy people that you are
Yes.
hearing reported to you.
Amazing. No, that's emotional intelligence right there. And it doesn't happen. You're right. When you are just like, nothing, it's fine. It's that doesn't help. And the amazing thing is that if you can do that, it's probably not about the trash. I mean, sometimes it's about the trash, but
Sometimes it's
sometimes
about the trash, Roya.
sometimes it is. But my job is always to read more deeply into everything. And so sometimes it's okay. So I'm frustrated that you haven't taken out the trash because I asked you to take out the trash, or I wish you would just notice and I don't have to carry the emotional burden and the labor of thinking about.
And also
when
torn rotator cuff, so not supposed to.
Yes. And not only am I having to do this, but now I feel alone in it and I feel like I'm not taken care of, which taps into my fear of I'm not worthy of love. So it's never really just about the trash.
No.
Sometimes the fix is notice that the trash needs to get taken out, and that will attend to those other deeper fears. But there's other deeper fears.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that we're sticky geniuses. We've always suspected as much. So that's, that's
there.
Great. I need more gold stars.
You win at couples.
So if this helps in your marriage with your husband, this is something my therapist tells me all the time about my darling, wonderful, perfect husband who happens to be crazy town ADHD, is that ADHD means you don't have a later. You only have now. And when I walk in to the kitchen and literally every single cabinet is open.
Just said.
And every goddamn light, including the ones that didn't need to be turned on, but that he forgot which light switch did which and then just didn't go back.
It took me on a tour of light switches this week.
Instead of losing my shit out loud, I remind myself, Michelle, he doesn't have a later.
He does not.
So he was in a hurry to do something to make my life easier, and he put the things that could be later in his later box and then forgot that ADHD eats that box.
It's just a two.
He only has now. He doesn't have later.
Yep.
And do not get me wrong. I absolutely am effing and blinding as I'm shutting every goddamn one of those cabinets We have a big kitchen, Roya. There's a lot of cabinets involved. He's lived here the same 8 years I have. He knows where things go. But like it does help as it becomes like my mantra. He doesn't have a later. He doesn't have a later. And it just helps remember that it's not about me. It's not that he didn't care enough or that he was lazy or that he left the crumbs in the dishes for me to clean up. He just doesn't have a later.
Yep. That's you assuming the best of him. And not the personal attack. Yeah. So my husband took me on a tour of our light switches. We've lived in this house for almost exactly a year. And he was like, do you genuinely not know which things are? I'm like, he took me on a tour. I still don't know. I just have to test them all. I've been yelled at for leaving cupboard door. Not yelled at. My parents. My husband has finally gotten to the point where he says, this thing's important to me. Will you set an alarm right now on your phone? So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. I may take that language, but yes, you can tell him that perhaps if he is struggling, he is welcome to borrow my mantra given to me by my delightful therapist. She doesn't have a later.
Nope, I do not. Which makes me, I think, a great in-person clinician and terrible at helping my clients with paperwork afterwards. So I'm right here with you when I'm here. And
I'm fully engaged.
Billing the super bills, yeah.
That is hilarious. Oh my God. Okay, I cannot believe this, but our time is almost up.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Zipped by because you're delightful. What have we not talked about that we should have, or what should I not what have I not asked you that I really should have done?
Well, part of my bees in my brain with my all the hustles and the side hustles and all the things, if people are interested in more than 3 and not just off the cuff of things that they can do to improve relationships with their kids, but also with partners and spouses, my book is called Connect with Courage, and it's on Amazon. It's on my website. And so if you just search for my name, you'll find me on TikTok and Instagram and all the things. But it's called Connect with Courage. And it started as a workbook for parents and it turns out, I have a lot of things to say. And so it turned into more. And so it's for people who want to better their relationship with their kids, who want to watch Pokemon with them or want to connect with them and struggle with that because maybe they hate the thing their kids are interested in or they're scared or whatever it is. And it gives really practical exercises to help them with that. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it for parents, but I've had a lot of people say that it actually really improved their relationship with their spouse. So there's that. And then if people are interested, I've got once a month Zoom call. I call them webinars, Zoom calls. They're 30 minutes and they're totally donations based. And I do them once a month. And so those are also on my website and they're on a variety of topics, often parenting, but not entirely. And then I have an online group called Play with Purpose, where we dive more into the idea of using playfulness and gamefulness to accomplish stuff.
I love all of those things. And we will have links to all of that, including your book in the show notes. People don't have to go digging. Please do go dig on her website because she's awesome and you should learn more about her. But like we'll make it easy peasy lemon squeezy for them to come to all of those things. The only thing I have not asked you that I ask everybody, when somebody asks you how much you make, what is your answer? How do you handle that?
It depends. If it's a client, we talk about why is it important for you to know? If it's someone else, I actually really like to talk about money a lot. I think we should talk about it more. I charge $200 a session for my one-on-one clients. When I started, I charged $60. So that I was an intern. So I've raised it based on now I have the need for childcare and paying rent and office space and all of that. And then it depends. Right now I'm averaging probably about 15, 16 clients a week. My goal for this year is 22, to average 22 clients. And then I would like to I'd like to earn that much again with like my products and book sales and webinar sales and things like that. So I don't know, I'm open. I like to talk about money.
I love it. I'm a huge believer in being transparent financially. I think that the only way that we can really start to address the pay gaps and wealth divides in this country is if everybody just posts on the door what they make and stops trying to, hide it in secret. So I love that completely. All of that having been said, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And I really cannot appreciate you enough for all of that. Have a great one. And thank you so very much.
Oh, and you have been so fun. And we could talk for hours and hours. So thank you too. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks, Roya. You've been listening to Hey, I Want Your Job. For more information on how you can get your own awesome job, visit ONH Consulting at www.onhconsulting.com. We offer incredible resumes, no-nonsense career advice, and real-world tips for landing a job in today's market. Check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Insta for more insider information. Soon, you'll be hearing us say, I'm Michelle Olivier, and hey, I want your job.